the first thing to note is that as of the Poppy release, the app is no longer called LDP. It's called Reporting. And the reason for that is two fairly major changes that came in at that point. One of them is behind the scenes. It's that as well as being able to communicate with the classic LDP backend, it can now also work against MetaDB, which is the next generation version of that server. And the key thing, I think, the most significant change there is that MetaDB supports real-time event streaming so that the reporting database is kept up to date within a matter of seconds with what's happening in the live database. And that means that now whatever reporting you do will be showing you what's in the database now rather than what was in it 24 hours ago or a month ago or however often an update is done. But the other significant new thing is the ability to run reports. So before I show you those, I'd like to show you the relevant settings. Okay, within settings, you're probably familiar if you've used the old LDP app with record limits, table availability, and database configuration. What's new here is reports repositories. And the idea is that you can use this to specify where reports exist that have been written by SQL experts who understand the structure of the reporting database in a way that I don't, to be perfectly honest. I'm a software engineer, not a data engineer. So I can't really write these queries except for very simple ones, but I've written the software that knows how to use them. So if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that there are currently 3 repositories defined, and each of them describes an area within GitHub, specified by saying who the user is that owns that. This one is owned by me because I've been using it for development, the name of the repository, the branch within it, and the directory in there. And if you follow this link, you can see what's actually in those directories. My apologies if this is a bit low level for some of you. I'm not quite sure exactly how to pitch this. But what you're seeing now, just blow that font up a bit, is the reality of what's actually being run when you run a report. So each report is defined by 2 files. One, like I'm hovering over here, is an SQL query that's the report itself. And I'm going to show you an extremely simple one that I made for this demo. So if you know a little bit of SQL, you'll recognize this select statement that's pulling a bunch of fields out of the list of courses that the Course Reserves app maintains, and that it has a couple of criteria here that let us specify which courses we're interested in by how many students are enrolled to them. So this SQL file is the report proper, but along with that comes this JSON file which describes, provides metadata that describes how that query is parameterized. So here you can see in this file, there are things like the actual name of the course, of the report, which is courses filtered by student count. A bit of description, you can say as much as you like here. Critically, this set of parameters, and this explains to the reporting app which questions it should ask the user to allow the report to be run with the appropriate set of parameters. So in this case, again, very, very simple, the minimum and maximum number of students that we're interested in a given course. So I'm going to show you now how we actually use this. So at the moment, the reporting app is configured to use queries from this repository, so including the courses one I just showed you and a couple of others, but also from these other repositories that just have 1 or 2 other queries in of their own. And of course, once these settings are set up, you won't generally need to go back to them again. You'll just use the reporting app itself. So here we are now in the run report area. And you can see that there's a list of reports that are available to be run. And over here, it'll tell you in the GitHub repository column, it'll tell you which of the various sources they're drawn from. So you can see that those 3 repositories that contain reports have all made a contribution here. But the one we're interested in at the moment is this very simple courses one. So when you click through here, the form that you're seeing now is generated from the metadata file that I showed you. So that's what specifies which questions you can ask. By the way, I don't know whether we'll keep these, but while we're in development mode, these links at the top, SQL query and JSON metadata, as you would guess, they go straight to those files that I was showing you before. And I've found that useful in writing the software just to keep track of what I'm doing exactly. So if we don't bother filling these in at all, we can just submit the form. And you'll see here's the result of running the reports with no parameters put in. So it's set up to tell us a small number of fields about each of the course, including critically the course number and the name and the number of students. And you can see that the number of students varies from, I think we've got 8 and 9 down here up to 42. So if we narrow that down, we can close this and enter parameter and say we're only interested in courses that have at least 20 students. So now it's going to run the same SQL again, but substituting in this value to give us, you can see here in the number of students column, only those which have the appropriate number of students enrolled in the course. So if I go back to this run report tab now, I can look at, here's another very simple query, which lists users by the date of creation. Now the filtering here, I would like to show it to you because it's an example of how the parameters that you fill in for these forms can be different types. One was we saw before were just numbers, these are dates. They're not very interesting because all the users were created on the same date, which is today. And that's because I'm running against the snapshot database, which is regenerated every day. But again, if we run that, you can see there's a similar kind of a result. And it's user IDs, barcodes, and creation dates. So multiple reports are available. I don't know whether you've noticed, but here on the left-hand side now, for the various reports that we have, these tabs have popped up. So we can go back to the one about courses filtered by student count, or the one about listing users by date of creation. And those leap into existence as we need them. I think this count loans and renewals form is a much more complex form, and this has been created by somebody who knows what they're doing. But unfortunately, although you can see from the form itself that there's a lot more going on here, the current state of the folio snapshot data is that there's only one record at all of the kind that meets that requirement. So I can't usefully show you the results of putting values in to filter these. But there it is, and that's if I take you back to this, you can see that the and like any other tab, of course, you can close these when you've had enough of them. And I think there I've probably shown you the bulk of what exists in the reporting facility as it stands at the moment. I suppose the way I would summarize this is critically what it does is allow people to bring a much greater level of expertise in data analysis than the query builder allows. So that's why we're excited about this.